Imagine walking through your garden one evening and catching the unmistakable smell of freshly buttered popcorn. But there's no popcorn machine nearby, just a tomato plant. Which raises an interesting question. Is this the future of farming or the beginning of very confusing salads? Good evening, my Nite listeners. This is Sunny with Muse Media. And we're going to jump on into a sometimes controversial topic, a tomato. But not quite the kind you'd expect to find in your garden. Scientists have recently created a tomato that releases an aroma similar to, butter-flavored popcorn. Yes, popcorn. The unusual scent comes from a naturally occurring molecule called 2-acetyl-1-pyrroline, often abbreviated as 2-A-P. This compound is responsible for the signature aroma found in foods like basmati rice, jasmine rice, and freshly popped popcorn. Using a gene editing technique called CRISPR, researchers disabled 2 genes in the tomato plant that normally suppress this aroma compound. And once those genes were switched off, the plant began producing higher levels of popcorn-like scent. The tomato still grows normally. It still looks like a tomato, but it carries a surprising fragrance. And while it might sound like a novelty experiment, the goal behind the research is actually quite practical because many modern tomatoes have lost much of their natural flavor. And I gotta say, I agree. I remember the tomatoes out of my father's garden, and they had so much flavor. They were delightful. And decades, though, of breeding focused on durability, uniform shape, and long shelf life. Tomatoes needed to survive the shipping across continents, and they needed to ripen evenly. They needed to look perfect on the supermarket shelves. Flavor sometimes came second. So scientists are now asking a simple question: can we bring taste back? But this isn't the first time researchers have tried to change a tomato. In fact, the story goes back more than 30 years. In 1994, scientists introduced one of the first genetically engineered foods ever sold to the public. It was called the Flavor Saver tomato. You have to take the O's out of there. Its genetic modification slowed down the enzyme that causes tomatoes to soften. The idea was a simple one. A tomato could ripen on the vine, where flavor develops best, but still remain firm enough to survive transportation. The Flavor Saver made history, but it also triggered one of the earliest public debates about genetically modified foods. Some people welcomed the innovation, others worried about altering the genetics of what we eat. The tomato eventually disappeared from stores, largely due to economic challenges, but the conversation it started, it never really ended. It may never end. Today, gene editing technology has become far more precise. Techniques like CRISPR allow scientists to modify specific genes in a plant's DNA without introducing foreign species. Instead of inserting entirely new genetic material, researchers can simply turn certain genes on or off. Whenever the words genetic modification or gene editing appear in a headline, they often trigger mixed reactions. And that's not what I'm going for. For some people, the idea of altering the DNA of a plant, it raises immediate concerns. Others see it as a powerful tool that could help solve real problems in agriculture and food production. So what exactly are scientists doing when they create something like a popcorn-scented tomato? In many modern experiments, researchers are not adding genes from the other species. Again, they're turning the genes on or off within the plant itself. In that sense, the process can resemble what traditional plant breeders have done for centuries, selecting plants with desirable traits and then encouraging those traits to continue in future generations. The difference is speed and precision. Rather than waiting decades for natural variations to appear, scientists can make very targeted adjustments to a plant's existing DNA. Supporters of this technology say it could help farmers grow crops that are resistant to more diseases, tolerant to drought, more nutritious, and hopefully more flavorful. In a world facing climate change and a growing population, some researchers believe that tools could help strengthen global food security, but critics raise important questions as well. They worry about how genetic changes might affect ecosystems if altered plants spread into the wild. Others are concerned about corporate control of patented crop varieties. And some people simply feel uneasy about changing the genetic structure of the foods we eat. One concern that often comes up is whether eating genetically modified food could affect human DNA. And scientists say that isn't how digestion works. When we eat any food, whether it's a tomato, a carrot, or a piece of bread, our digestive system breaks down DNA into its basic components long before it enters our bloodstream. In other words, the genetic material in food does not merge with human genes. It's not the same as having something injected directly into the blood. Still, conversations about genetic technology in food do continue, and they will, and I hope they do. And many experts say it's important to approach these innovations with curiosity and caution. Because like many powerful tools, the impact depends on how wisely they are used. The question isn't only what science allows us to do, it's how thoughtfully we choose to do it. And this opens the door to something fascinating, the possibility of designing flavor itself. Researchers are now experimenting with ways to enhance sweetness in fruits, restore lost aromas in vegetables, or even create entirely new flavor profiles. All I can think of are schnozberries. Imagine strawberries with intensified fragrance, peppers with altered heat levels, or tomatoes with unexpected aromas like popcorn. And then there's an experiment that sounds almost like science fiction. Scientists once created a tomato that turned deep purple, not from dye, not from breeding, but from genetics. Researchers inserted genes from a snapdragon flower, of all things, into a tomato plant. And those genes triggered the production of anthocyanins, the same pigments that give blueberries and blackberries their dark purple color. The result was a tomato so rich in antioxidants that it appeared almost black. Some scientists believe these purple tomatoes could eventually have health benefits due to their high antioxidant levels, but experiments like these also raise bigger questions. For thousands of years, humans shape plants slowly. Farmers saved seeds from the best harvests. Over generations, crops changed through natural selection guided by human hands. And now we stand at a new threshold, one where flavor, color, aroma, and even nutritional content can be adjusted directly at the genetic level. Food may soon become something we design with extraordinary precision, and that leads us to a deep reflection, because food has always been one of the most ancient connections to the natural world. Every culture carries flavors shaped by climate, soil, and centuries of farming traditions. Now we're entering a time where the boundary between nature and design is becoming harder to see. And perhaps the real question isn't simply whether we can create a tomato that smells like popcorn. It's how we choose to use the tools we've been given. Because the future of food may not only grow in fields, it may also be written one gene at a time. Follow the signals and question the noise. I'll see you again on the night side.
Said I made up my mind this time.